Oh, crikey. I'd still say about 90% at least, because again, as soon as I wake up in the morning, I wake up at like 5 o'clock. First thing I do is I take a probiotic. Yeah, I slam one of those into me. Good drink of water, and then I'll go back to sleep for an hour. So, but I know my gut is going to be okay for a little while. And as soon as I get up, this is my usual chair, but as soon as I get up then, I pump the tire up on my other chair that I train in, and my gym now is my kitchen. So I've got all these little hooks lined up all around the kitchen. It looks horrendous. It's a bloke's flat. So I got all these hooks, and that's all I think about then up until I start to train is what session am I going to do. And I always start off the day with a glass of apple cider vinegar, hot, with mother, apple cider vinegar with mother in it. And that's how I start. Then I have a cup of coffee, about an hour later, with creatine in it. Essential. Yeah, absolutely essential, even at my age. And then I give it 10 minutes, quarter of an hour, and then I start to train. And on Monday, for instance, I trained from 8:10 till 10 to 10, and I'm thinking to myself, crikey, that wasn't half bad. Obviously I rest in between, but I still did, and I thought, and I was chuffed to beans. I was absolutely chuffed to beans. But the great thing about it was, I thought to myself, I could have actually done a couple more sets there. But I didn't. I resisted that urge because I was absolutely knackered. But it was brilliant. I had a great session. Every single day. I absolutely love it. Well, there's going to be, now I haven't trained, I didn't train this morning, but when I get back, I'll do something. And I'm a firm believer, people say, oh, I didn't have time to train today, really. Well, actually, if you can just do one set, still better than no sets. I always look at something like that. Or, if I can just do 3 sets, could possibly take me 10 minutes, quarter of an hour. If you can't find a quarter of an hour in your day somewhere, I'll go back to it. Train half in the morning, go back in the afternoon, do a couple more sets. I cannot make any excuses whatsoever about going down the gym. My gym's in the kitchen. So when I go make myself a cup of coffee, what's wrong with doing a set of biceps? Or doing a lat pull down? Piece of cake. There's no excuses for me. Oh no, my partner Deb, she was absolutely amazing right through when I was first diagnosed with the cancer. I was diagnosed with prostate cancer, and once I was diagnosed with that, my first thought was, right, I got that, oh, what's the prognosis? What do I do next? Yeah? And so they said, well, we're going to do the radiotherapy. Do you know my biggest issue with the radiotherapy was I going to be able to park when I got down to the hospital. I know that sounds stupid, so Deb said, and I had to go every single day for 20 days. So Deb said, don't worry, we'll get through this. And she was my crutch as well as both my kids, all my family, you know. All my family were fantastic, my sister, our Em, our Benji. But Deb was there every single day. She'd take me down, she'd do some of her schoolwork, drop me off, I'd go and have the radiotherapy. And I trained right through the radiotherapy as well. Don't make excuses. Do not make excuses. I wasn't dying at the time anyway, so train. And even if I was dying, train. I want to die fit. I don't want to die unhealthy. Everything, because my family were so young. I had Ben. I was 47 when Ben was born, but I was a bit younger for Emma. And my biggest fear when Ben was born, would I live long enough to see him grow up? That was my biggest fear. And him and I had this conversation not so long ago. And we were chatting about that, and I said, oh, my biggest fear, Benji, growing up was, would I live long enough to see you? You know, I think he was 22 at the time. This was a few years ago. And he's 30 now, like, you know, and he was 22, 23 at the time, just come out of university. I said, no, I don't care, like I said, because you don't need me anymore. He said, that's a bit selfish, Dad. I said, what do you mean? He said, well, I don't want you to die. I said, well, I didn't mean I wanted to die. You know, I just mean that you don't really need me now. You can take care of yourself. And he said, because I still need you. I still need to bounce off you. I still feed off you. And that's my motivation. And now I've got a granddaughter, 5-year-old granddaughter. That's my motivation, to keep myself fit. And she phoned me up the other day. She said, Granchi, I want to go out on a date. You have to take me to the pub for some lunch. So 5, you know, so I'd like to stay around a bit longer to see her, you know. And again, back a few months ago then, after my first round of radiotherapy, they told me the cancer had gone into my lymph glands. So I said, okay, what do I do now? So I had to have another bout of radiotherapy, which, get on with it, yeah. And I trained right through that one as well. And I think that's my motivation. But I still love to get up in the morning. Don't lie in bed. Once you're awake, get up and do something. Get up. Just do something, you know, whatever it may be. If you vacuum a flat or whatever. But I still love to train, and I still love life. It's a great life, you know. It's only one chance you get at it. You don't get a second pop. You don't get a second pop unless you've read the book, 12-Hour Library or something like that. You would get multiple lives, but it don't happen like that for the vast majority of us, you know. Absolutely. The Midnight Library, have a read of it, everybody. Life ain't always greener. Well, when I was 18, there was a gang of us. We all decided to go to Butlins for holiday. So when we got it was absolutely fantastic, because then back in the day, 1964 this was, and sort of back in the day, you didn't take holidays abroad. That didn't come in really till the 70s, unless you had plenty of money, like, you know, so package holidays didn't come in. So everyone sort of took their holidays here. And Butlins was absolutely fantastic for youngsters, you know, for us kids. And so we were there, and I was always a bit bonkers anyway, like, you know. And we had one of the boys that was with us. He was really kind of shy and conservative, and he used to walk around like this, you know. He wouldn't say boo to a goose. So I said to him, we went to this fairground. And so I said to him, Mike, coming on this big wheel with me? Oh, I don't want to go on there. He said, well, yes, you are. You're coming on with me. So we got on this big wheel, and as it was going around, the guys on the bottom started shaking the car. So instead of, he was panicking and almost crying, holding on to this car. So worst thing he could have ever done, because I started shaking it. And as much as I possibly could, until it was almost somersaulting. And then I got to the very top, and I mean the very top, and the safety bar just came out in my hand. Woof, out I went, like a skydiver. I just went out. And I must have fallen from the very top. I'm not very good at how high it actually was, but it had to be something like 40 feet, something like that. So I fell, and I landed on a brick wall on my back. But my one arm was behind me, and when I must have hit this wall, bounced and led by the side of the wall. And I wasn't unconscious, but when I sort of came to my senses, I was led there, and I was looking at this hand, and I thought, that hand shouldn't look like that, because the fingers were touching my forearm, you know. And I thought, there's something wrong there. And I couldn't feel anything, you know. It was all numb, and there were people looking down at me, waiting for me to die, and it was awful. It was real weird, because my jeans, the jeans that I had on, it was a zip jean. Yeah? Now the zip completely broke away from the jeans with the impact. It was still zipped up, but the stitching on the side had broken away. And this girl came and put a handkerchief, that's saying how big I was, on where it was broken. I wish it had been a scarf, because at least I could have bragged about that. But so they then decided to fly me. They said, oh, look, we're going to have to send him to Stoke Mandeville. And how I knew, I don't know, but they flew me then to Stoke Mandeville by helicopter. And I always remember in the helicopter, I was thirsty and I asked for a drink. But they couldn't give me anything to drink because of internal bleeding. So this one of the drivers gave me a polo. And so I was sucking on that until I got to Stoke Mandeville. They took me into Stoke Mandeville and they wheeled me into this ward. And they were sticking all these pins in me. And then all of a sudden they put an indelible pen across my chest. This is where we think he's broken his back. But the worst thing was I just had bought this brand new polo shirt that day and they cut it off me. I was gutted. How stupid is that? How stupid that you're thinking about this brand new polo shirt that they cut off and you broke your bloody back, like, you know. So, but when they come round the next morning and said, look, you've broken your back and we're going to have to give you a lumbar puncture and blah, blah, blah. But I was there then for something like 6 months. And after about 3 months, I knew it was pretty bad because everybody was wheeling around, going around in wheelchairs. But I was afraid to actually ask what was going to be the rest of my life, like, you know. So I can remember Dr. Magapadi, and he came around and I thought, I got to pluck up the courage. I said, Doctor, what's the prognosis? How long am I going to be like this? And he said, how long has it been, John? I said, 12 weeks. So he said, well, what you have now is what you're going to have to live with for the rest of your life. I thought, whoa, that was a kick. That was a kick. And I was really depressed then for a bit, like, you know. I thought, whoa. And everybody was saying to me, oh, you're lucky, you're L1. You know, I broke my neck, and I was thinking, I don't really feel that lucky, to be honest with you. You know, and because everything is personal, isn't it? And I can remember talking to a doctor and saying, everybody's saying I'm lucky, and I don't really feel that lucky. He said, and it's a brilliant analogy of disability or whatever, or your own personal life. And he said, look, John, if you were lined up against a wall with 100 people and you're all being whipped, it doesn't lessen your pain anymore knowing that 99 others are getting it. So I thought, I can take that one. And I suppose as the months went on, but at that particular time, if someone had offered me a tablet, I more than likely would have taken it. The last thing I wanted was to be in a wheelchair. You know, because before that, I loved my boxing, my gymnastics, and sport was my life, like, you know. Because I remember once talking to Owen Money, he interviewed me once, and he said, what kind of sports did you do, John, before? And I said the same, you know, boxing, gymnastics. He said, oh, you did a bit of boxing. I said, yes, so, and I did a little bit. He said, I thought so, because you've got a nose like a blind cobbler's thumb. Crazy, absolutely crazy. But it took me, when I came out of hospital, in all honesty, if I could have gone back to Stoke Mandeville, I would have, because it wasn't a great place to be when I came out. I got refused entry into restaurants, pubs, buses even. They wouldn't let me on buses. So I'd go to my local pub where they all knew me anyway, and we'd come out if we were going somewhere else. And the boys used to get me out of my wheelchair, and they'd stand me up as though nothing was wrong with me, put their arms around me like a little bit tipsy. And they chucked me on the bus and then dragged the chair on afterwards, so the driver and the conductor couldn't say anything. So then we'd go. Oh, disability was totally different there. You were, back then, apart from my friends and family, I was a nothing. I can remember going to a working men's club on a Friday night, and I said to my mate, I said, oh, Di, I need to go to the loo. Can you just make a bit of a gap for me to come through? And we got to, and there was this old guy on the door, and he said to my mate, what the hell do you bring that here for tonight? He said, you can see we're full. Why don't you come on a Monday when there's nobody here? My mate said, I'll let you down those steps in a minute. But people just kind of dismissed me. But one of the funniest things that ever happened to me was I was outside the local fish shop, and this car pulled up. Stunning looking girl got out. Oh, gosh, she was awesome. And she came walking down towards the fish shop, and she started smiling at me. I'm looking around thinking, she must be smiling at one of my mates, it can't be me. But no, she smiled at me. She went into the fish shop, and she waving at me through the fish shop window, and the boys were Ooh, ooh, look at Aris, ooh. And she came out of this fish shop, and she walked straight towards me, yeah? My heart is going 15 to the dozen. And she gave me money to buy chips. Oh, I was gutted. I wanted fish and chips. She only gave me half a crown. You'll have to Google that. So she gave 12 and a half pence. She gave me 12 and a half pence back then to buy some chips. And I thought, oh my God, is this going to be the rest of my life? Am I going to be sat on some pavement somewhere where people are just chucking money in a cap? And that's where the terminology handicap came from. Cap in hand, charity case. Weird one, isn't it? But I looked at it and I thought, my God, I have to do something. I have to do something with my life. I didn't know what to do, because I think your life is a bit like jigsaw puzzle, yeah? You open a box, you throw them all on the table, and you start putting your life together. Oh, I'd like to do this. I'd like to be a newspaper reporter. I'd like to be a television interviewer. And I'd like to be a football player, rugby player. Whatever it may be, you have all these dreams, yeah? You have all these dreams. At 22, 23, I couldn't even open the box. And I was just a drunk. I was like 13 and a half stone. I had a 49 and a half inch chest, 39 waist, and couldn't see my neck. And I wasn't a particularly nice person. And my mother, who was the most unbelievable, sat at my bedside from 9 o'clock in the morning till 9 o'clock at night when I had my accident. And I came home this one night. She said, I need to talk to you. So I said, yeah, what do you want, ma'am? She said, I'm your mother, and I love you, but I don't like you anymore. You're not a very nice person. Whoa. For your mother to say that, that was, for me, that was the catalyst to kicking myself into gear to do something. And I'm not religious in any way, shape or form, but I'm a firm believer in fate. And I was down the pub within days, and one of the guys down at Kenwell said, look at the state you're in, Johnny Harris. Why don't you come down the gym and have a train? And I thought, everybody's going to look like Arnold Schwarzenegger, you know. That was just the women. But I finally plucked up the courage and I went. And within days, weeks, I was in that environment where that's what I wanted to do. This is where I was. And he stopped training, Ken, but I couldn't. I had to keep going. And at that time I was smoking, drinking, you name it. I was doing it just to forget about my life and who I was. I couldn't even look in the mirror. I didn't like who I was. I didn't like what stared back. And in the corner of our gym was this group of bodybuilders, weightlifters, powerlifters. So I'm training there the one day, and there's this little fella came over to me, about 5'2", 5'3", and someone once described a boxer as having muscles in places and most people don't even have places. And Ken Norton, he said it about. And this little fella come over, and he said, I don't want to stop your training, and if I'm interfering, just tell me to go away. His name was Brian Taylor. And he said to me, but you're doing that exercise wrong. I said, hey, look, please, you know, I want to learn. I want to learn. So he showed me how to do this exercise. About 5'4", Brian was. Showed me how to do this exercise, went back to the corner with his mates. Following week, he's back again. Look, he says, me again, but you are doing that exercise wrong. So he showed me again. And the following week, he came over, he said, the guys want you to come and train with us. So I said, what do you mean? He said, yeah, come on, come and train with us. Now, back then, that was kind of unheard of. Now, it's kind of the norm. And all these guys, as much stick that they used to give weightlifters, powerlifters, bodybuilders, all they wanted to do was to give me the opportunity to train. And they'd look at a piece of kit and they'd try to adapt it as best they could to give me that chance to work out. We used to have an old power sport, blue multi-gym, and after this was then again about a year down the line, we used to have a ladder on it, And they used to strap my feet to the ladder with my head on the floor and give me 100K, and I'd be doing my exercise. They were absolutely bonkers, but they gave me my life back. And I can remember being in the house the one day, and I looked in the mirror, and I stared back. I'd started to become happy in this shell and who I was. And then I started pushing around with a bit more confidence. Yeah, this is me. And I started enjoying myself and coming to terms with the disability, who I was, and everything that went with the disability. And I thought, nah, get on with it. Get on with it. And as soon as I started doing that, whoop, my jigsaw puzzle was open. And I was on the move. And it was a kind of a roller coaster ride from then on in, you know, and life was very, very good for me at that particular time. It was starting to become really, really good. I think you're born with that kind of a personality and that motivation, and I absolutely loved sport. And I can remember the 1964 Olympics when Lynn Davis was competing, and I was out on my bike. And I was going for a ride out the Landegford Reservoir, but I had to come back to watch Lynn Davis compete on the TV because I loved the sport that much. And you have to have your heroes as well. But sport was so important to me. But I think that the disability and the knocks that I had and the way people dissed me, you know, made me stronger. I'm 100% positive that made me such a strong person. My personality was always there, but that made me strong without a shadow of a doubt. And I used to think all those people that knocked me and all those people that didn't want me in their club, want me on their bus, want me in their restaurant, would one day eat their words. And they would want me in their restaurant, they would want me in their club, because I was going to be someone. Didn't know what, but I was going to be someone. And I thought, for me, I was never going to make it academically, but I knew if I was going to do it, it would be sport. Sport was going to be the catalyst for me. And I joined a fab club, physically handicapped, able-bodied. And I became a bit of a hero to some of the disabled kids down because they were horrendous disabilities. And there was this leaflet on the table. There was a competition down in Barry. And I went down, I won everything I entered. And then someone said, you should join the Welsh Paraplegic Tetraplegic Sports Association, which I did. And I went down, and I wasn't welcomed initially. Took quite a while to get into this club. But within a year, I got to represent Wales at the National Games in Stoke Mandeville. And I can remember going up there, bag of nerves, and I was throwing discus at the time, as well as weightlifting. And I was throwing discus at the time, and I was throwing about 17, 18 meters, something like that. Really poor, but it was kind of okay. It was all right for that because I got to represent Rookwood and I got to represent Wales. And when we got up there on the Monday morning when we were competing, we were all lined up, about 25 of us ready to throw discus. And I'm sat there, and we're all chatting, all a bit nervous. And I looked up, I saw this guy wheeling towards us in his wheelchair, actually smoking a cigar. Never would have happened. Well, it shouldn't have happened then, but it did. But no one said anything to him. They were all kind of afraid of him. And they said, "How are you, Graham?" He said, "Yeah, all right." Puffed on a cigar, and he put in the spokes in his wheelchair. So they said, "Wonder who's going to get the silver medal today, Graham?" He said, "Don't know, one of you are. I'll be having the gold." Just like that. And I looked at him, I thought, "You big-headed git. Who the hell do you think you are?" You know? So I was tamping. I was absolutely tamping. So when it came my turn to throw, I had a PB. I threw 22 meters. So from 17 to 22, it was pretty good. And he threw 16 and a half meters. And I thought, ooh, I got him. But you get 3 throws in the morning, 3 in the afternoons. So he came out in the afternoon. And I'd found out he'd been European champion, Commonwealth champion, British champion. Bit past his sell-by date, because he was now playing table tennis as well, So he's past his sell-by date. And I thought, I can't beat him. So he came out in the afternoon. So I'd relaxed, so I didn't throw any further than my 22 meters. So he came out, He came out and threw 26 and a half meters. Just remember being gutted, absolutely gutted. And he wheeled past me, took a cigar out, and he went, win some, lose some. One thing I learned from that was never judge a book by its cover.
100%.
Don't ever be judgmental. But what I wanted to know, what made him the best? Why was he the best? Was it training? Because I tell you what, he didn't look half as strong as me. He didn't look any better than me. He was just another bloke in front of me. So why were all these people in awe, not fear, but in awe of this man? And he petrified them, absolutely petrified them. And I wanted to know why. So for the whole week, I just sat with him. I didn't bother with any of the Welsh team. I just sat with this bloke. I wanted to know what made him the best. Oh, he was fantastic with me, but he lived up in Oswestry, so I had to make the most of what he gave me then, And woof, self-belief is a massive thing. And also letting other people know how good you are, And he had it off to a T. He was fantastic. Without a shadow of a doubt, and one of the things that stuck out for me, as well as winning some of the medals, but one of the things that stuck out for me, my first Paralympic Games, in 1979, prior to this first Paralympic Games, I got selected for Great Britain to go to Canada for a thing called a Super Challenge. There was only 4 of us invited from Great Britain, and there was only 50 throughout the world that went. So we went to Canada, and it was, like I say, it was called a Super Challenge. And you had to do multiple of events. And to make it sort of, fair, every event you entered was based on world record. So you were given points on the world record that was in your class at that particular time. And so after the 8 days of competing, the points were totaled, and I was 49th out of the 50. But the only one people wanted to know was the bloke that won it. Nobody wanted to know me. I was nothing, I was nobody. I was 49th. I wasn't even muck on his shoe. And I looked at him, I hated the bastard. I hated him with a passion. With a passion, I hated him. And he was Canadian, but I hated him with a passion. And I went home from there, and you've got 1 or 2 choices. Pack it in, or train harder. Training harder was the better option. And started thinking about not just training harder, but training smarter. Because I wasn't the biggest bloke in the world, but training smarter. And then the following year, got selected for the Paralympics in 1980, and it was held in Arnhem at those days. You just had to hold the Olympics wherever they could. But the big thing that stuck in my mind came out of the Paralympics in 1980 was I broke Graham Smout's British record, and no one had ever thrown further than me by this time then. I threw 29 meters 50, and to break Graham Smout's record in the discus, but it still was only 6th. And my mate, Steve Gregg, we went everywhere together. He was from up in Yorkshire. And he won a silver medal in shot put. And I clapped as loud and as long as everyone when he won a silver medal. But I wanted him to come away with nothing, same as me. And I wouldn't even wheel by the side of him. I was wheeling behind him because everybody was saying, oh, can we have a look at the medal, Steve? Kept taking this silver medal out. I can see it this day, kept taking this silver medal out. And I didn't hate Steve because I loved him, he was my mate, but envy, and even doesn't even describe it. And because I wanted one of those more than anything else in the world, like, you know, I didn't care if I died after, but I wanted one of those medals. And I can remember going home, and I cut out this bit of foil, and I stuck it on my bedroom wall. It's gold foil. So you don't train to come second here. You only train to win. There's only winning. I know Pierre de Coubertin said, it's not the winning, it's the taking part, bollocks. Like hell it is. You ask anybody that competes, it's the taking part. Yeah, of course it is. And so I ripped that bit of paper up. It's the taking part. But, you know, I'm not going to say every single morning, but it was there. It was always there, you know, at the back of your mind. Come tail end of 1983, we'd heard that the Olympics in the States was cancelled. They couldn't raise the money for the Paralympics. Yeah? They could not raise the money. So the only place that could hold it was this country. And the only place they got the venue had to be Stoke Mandeville, because they were the only ones with the accommodation and surrounding networks. It was a fantastic network. So I decided to retire out, because how can you cancel the Olympics? Because there isn't an able-bodied athlete alive could feel like I felt. They couldn't feel any better, because sport is sport. You know, and I found the greatest thing about sport as a leveler, able-bodied athletes were on our side, and we were just athletes. And we cried when we were sad, and we laughed when we were happy, and we puffed our chests out when we won. Yeah? And we were all exactly the same, whoever you were. And they all had those little idiosyncrasies, you know, and it was fantastic, and they were always great with me. So anyway, they sent me a letter saying would I like to take part in my second Paralympic Games, and they wouldn't sign the letter. And I went into work, and I was telling the guys about it. And he said, oh, you've got to go to the Olympics. And I said, hey, look, let me tell you something now. It was the Olympics, and they've crapped on me from a great height, and all the rest of us, you know. And no, I'm not going to go. And at our dinner table was this guy called Larry Thatcher. And Larry was a very good rugby player. And he was also a good coach, Larry. So he sat there after everybody went. He said, not going to sign that bit of paper then, John? I said, no, well, when am I going to retire, Larry? So he said, you've had a pretty good life so far. So I said, yeah, I've been lucky compared to some. Very good friend of mine. I've done one Olympic Games, yeah. Very good friend of mine by the name of Alan Carter. When I asked him how many times he played for Wales, he said, oh, I only played twice. Only played twice for Wales. Only played twice. Yeah? How many people would give their right arm, right foot, left eye, and backside to play once, or even sit on the bench? Out of 3 million people in Wales, he got to play twice for Wales. What an honour. What an absolute honour. Yeah? You've got to be great to do that. You've got to be a great rugby player to do that. Going back to Larry Thatcher, because I would not have competed in my second Paralympic Games, but he said to me, you've had a good life so far. And I said, yeah, it's been great, you know, Larry, but, you know, and he said, so you're not going to sign that bit of paper? I said, no. And he said, so you're going to go out sulking? Are you like a little baby? You are not prepared to fight? And I looked at him and I said, he's right. He's right. I need to fight again. Everybody needs someone, arm around your shoulder, kick up the backside, talk to you. And that one sentence said it all. I signed the paper then in front of him, sent it off, and I got selected then for my second Paralympic Games. And just before we went to Stoke Mandeville, because Prince Charles was opening the Games, they asked if I would read the athlete's oath. Whoa, what an honour to read the athlete's oath for your country. What an unbelievable, fantastic honour, obviously. And within half an hour, I knew the oath off by heart, although we still had months to go. And I can remember the opening ceremony on a Sunday up in Stoke Mandeville, 1984, chock-a-block with people, thousands upon thousands there. And I have to wheel up onto a podium to read this oath. So I have it on a bit of paper on my lap. So as I'm wheeling up this podium, I look at this bit of paper and I thought, I don't need that bit of paper. I know this oath off by heart. What if I forget? You know, you're not going to forget that. It's only a few words. Yeah, but what if you do forget? And I'm starting to doubt myself. So if I'm starting to doubt myself over being able to remember a few words on a bit of paper, what am I going to be like tomorrow morning on the Monday when I start to compete? Because I was one of the first on. And I looked at this bit of paper. I suppose that's where the nitric oxide comes from. And breathing in through me, I screwed it up and I threw it away. Wheeled up on the podium and it went perfect. And I got back to, and I wheeled back to where I was going to be introduced to Prince Charles. Wheeled back, and there's only a few of us there. And Prince Charles comes up to me and he said, very good. He said, how did you have your accident? So I said, I fell off a big wheel in Butland, sir. He said, oh, that was nasty. So I said, not really. I said, because I had 9 points for degree of difficulty in my dive and 8 for style. He turned this fella by the side of him and he said, that's a typical Welsh sense of humour. And the next day was the discus competition proper. And like I said earlier, what happens is you get 3 throws because you're chained in. They can't keep chaining and unchaining you. So they chain you in. You get 3 throws. The best 8 go through for a final 3 throws. And at that particular time, I was one of the first athletes to get selected on one event, which I told the coaches I was only going to compete in discus. And they said, leave it up to you, John. I said, I'll throw javelin and I'll throw shot put, but I'm not going to train for them. The only chance I got of winning a medal is if I concentrate on discus. And he said, leave it entirely up to you. So I trained and I trained and I trained and I trained a bit more and a bit more and a bit more. And at that particular time, I used to have to go out and just whenever I could and train, you know. If it was 3 times a day, that was it. I'd have to go 3 times a day. And when it come to throwing, I felt I was in with a chance. But there were 6 guys there I'd never beaten before. But somewhere in there said, you're in with a chance today, Johnny Harris, you know. But I got to be honest, I was a bag of nerves, like, you know. So we came out, and my first 3 throws were just absolute crap. Absolute crap. I managed to scrape into the top 8. So we came out in the afternoon, and when it came my turn to throw, my next 2 throws were rubbish. And I had this discus in my hand, and up until then, I guess I was one of the most selfish people that I knew. Everything was about me. Me, 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 and a bit more me. Yeah? I expected my friends, family, coaches, all to be helping me achieve my goal of winning an Olympic medal. I had this one fella, I'd call him in the morning, Roy. I'd give him 10 fags, Roy passed. Give him 10 fags. Come down the field, I want to do a bit of training. After that, I didn't even bother to say thanks. Then I'd get him to come down in the evening sometimes, you know. Maybe go down to Cumbrand Stadium, do a bit of pushing around the track. But my whole life revolved around training, competing, because I wanted that medal. More than anything else in the world, I wanted a medal. Because that would have elevated me above and beyond anything I was then. So I sat there, and all this was going through my mind. I only got 3 minutes to throw. And I'm looking at this discus, and I thought, if I never throw another discus, this isn't about me anymore. This is about my friends, my family. This is about Roy Pask, Johnny Gould, my coach, oh, ma'am, sisters, and if I never throw again, this is for them. And then all of a sudden, I started getting goosebumps. And they were trickling up and down my arm, right over the top of my head, down into this arm. And I started warming up, and my arm was just going like a pendulum. And the discus felt like it belonged to me, no one else. It was mine. I took a deep breath. I just let this discus go. I just went, and it went like I knew it was a long way. And the boys said, "Whoa, that's a good one, John, that's a good one." And when they went out to measure it, they were out there, and the officials measuring it, and they were chatting amongst one another. And then all of a sudden, one of them called for a metal tape. And I sat there and I thought, I've broken a world record. Because the only way you can break a world record is if they measure it with a metal tape. I said, I got the world record. And when they measured it, it was 31 meters and 88 centimeters. Remember that like it was yesterday, it was 1984. Don't ask me what I did yesterday. And I sat there, I broke the world record, but I got no weight for these other 5 guys to throw, 6 guys, whatever it was. And all this is going through my mind. I can't watch them because they'd all beaten me before. Anyway, I'd never beaten any of them. And then it comes down, I'm looking up at the scoreboard, and I'm lying in bronze medal position. No one could take it from me. I've got a bronze medal. Not what I wanted, but I've got one. And all I could think is, I can phone home mum and tell her I won a bronze medal. And Roy and John. So I'm sat there, and before I know it, I'm in silver medal position. And then the final athlete is a guy called Kowalik, Polish. Oh, he's a big lad. He's a whopper. And there's me, Johnny Harris, 5 foot and a tater from Pontypool. And he gets up there, and his first 2 throws, I can't watch it. And my mates say, hey, you haven't reached the distance, John. Definitely haven't reached it. And then his final throw, I can smell him, I can taste him. He's all over me like a rash. And then all of a sudden, he starts winding up. He gives this God almighty scream. Sounds exactly the same in Polish as it does in English, I can tell you that one. And he let this discus go, and all I can remember was clang. And he hit the discus cage. And I'm sat there, every drop of blood had drained out of my body because I'm an Olympic gold medalist. And I'm the best in the world. I'm the best in the whole frigging world. I wasn't the best in Pontypool. And I wasn't the best in Torfaen or Wales, Great Britain. Johnny Harris was the best in the world. There I am. I've done it. 11 years I've been going. And now I'm an Olympic gold medalist. Don't come any better than that. Absolutely awesome. I needed that gold medal to prove to myself that I was that good. And you ask anyone that ever competes, and their biggest fear will be coming last and losing. That's their biggest fear. The winning, because when I let that discus go, it was so easy, I didn't even feel it. I didn't even know it had left my hand. It was so easy, you know. But that was my reward for believing in myself. Loads of people say, oh, I'm going to stuff him, I'm going to beat him, I'm going to smash him, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. Don't always work. Doesn't always work. But you still have to have that belief in yourself. And that belief that I had in my own ability and myself to compete with the big guys and beat them, that was my reward. I did it. Maybe the next day I'd have come last. Don't know. But that was Johnny Harris's day. That was my day. It was my time. It was my time to be world champion. And it's been beaten 1,001 times since then. But no one can take that gold medal from me. They can have all the records they want in the world. Couldn't care less. That's mine. Yeah. And at that particular time, I was the best. And that's all I cared about. That's all I cared about. Yeah, I think it was awesome. And I think if I can think of someone, that one thing that stuck in my mind was this great 6'5", 6'6", second row forward, Kevin Mosley. We had a great training session one day. And there's me, sat there, like, you know, and Mosley comes over, and he'd had a particularly good training session. Then he looked down at me, said, "All right to go now, John?" And I thought, "Oh, you can do whatever you want to, Kev," you know. And that's what it was. But the respect that I had from, from Alan and the boys, and Steve Jones. What an amazing man he was, you know, one of the coaches of Pontypool. But look at him as a hooker. He wasn't no bigger than me, Steve, but what a brilliant hooker. But that relationship I had up there with all the guys, it was absolutely phenomenal, like, you know, and that was the respect that they gave me, the same as I gave them that respect. It was my time, and it was phenomenal. And around about that time, I got on a program called This Is Your Life. But the most important thing there, albeit my friends and family came, but the most important thing was the Pontypool team came up to London. People, the likes of David Bishop, and all came up to London to be on that program, to respect me, you know, for what I had achieved. I can't even begin to tell you what that meant to me, to see the whole of Pontypool rugby team being up there to be with me. That put the icing on the cake, because I felt like I've achieved. I'm here, I've arrived. It's a weird feeling, but an amazing feeling all the same. Like, it was awesome. See, what Pontypool did for me, and I knew every one of them, you know, and what Pontypool did for me was take me out of a lot of the doldrums. I could go out and I could watch the boys play, like, and I got to know them all of them. I can remember being up in Oxford once, and Alan will know Brian Gregory. Fingers, they called him, Brian. He was always putting his bloody fingers out for one. And I think he'd rather be with his pigeons than he would play rugby, or back row forward. But we were up playing Oxford, and Brian Gregory came into the clubhouse, and he came over to me and he said, "Hey, Johnny, can you do me a favour?" I said, "What's that, Gregory?" He said, "Can you look after my kit bag for me while I go and get a pint?" He said, "Because you know what these thieving bastards are like up here." So I said, "Of course I will, Greg, I'll give it you." And there's a Tesco's carrier bag full of his kit. They were just so down to earth, the boys were as well, like, you know, and we all just sat around together wherever they played, and I followed them all over the country. And it was just such a pleasure and such an honor to be with these great athletes. So many of them went on to represent Wales, some of them only twice. But they did, you know, they went on to represent Wales, like, you know. And it was awesome, absolutely fantastic. And legends around the whole of Pontypool, like, you know, absolute legends. Pontypool front row, Graham Price, Charlie Faulkner, you know, Bobby Windsor, some of the best ever rugby players on this planet. But I see Bobby now and again now, like, and I see Pricey up in town, like, you know, and they always the same, you know, and it's fantastic. I see Cobb, you know, and it's awesome, absolutely awesome it is, you know, absolutely awesome. Gave me a lot of my life, like, you know. It turned me, in my village, in Sebast, it turned me into a celebrity. Everybody knew me. And everybody in Wales knew me. This is God's honest truth. This is a true story. Radio Wales asked me to come down and do an interview. So I said, yeah, no problem. So they sent a taxi for me. He drove up through Sebastopol to Pontypool, and he wasn't sure where it was. So he went straight through Sebastopol. He stopped this bloke on the side of the road. He said, "Can you tell me where Sebastopol is?" And this bloke said, "Sebastopol? Oh, crikey, mate, I know." Quite sure. He said, "Who are you looking for?" He said, "I got to pick up a bloke called John Harris." "Oh, I know him. I know John Harris." He said, "You go straight down here and Sebastopol is blah, blah, blah." That must be Sebastopol, going down through Griffithstown and whatever, because Sebastopol's about this big, like, you know. But he knew me, and that's when he knew where I lived. So I'd become like a bit of a celebrity back home. And not that it makes you any different, any better, but it's still nice to have. It's still nice to have in your kit bag. After 84, I thought, it don't get no better than an Olympic gold medal. Where do I go from here? And I thought, we used to go down to Rookwood and we had our little clubhouse there and it was fantastic. We were all family and headed up by a bloke called Jim Monkley, who was, he was just off another planet, Jim Monkley. But we used to go down there and it was fantastic. But it was our clubhouse, but it was also the physio department. And they could hire it out to the women's whatever, and they could have a raffle there and we couldn't go. So I wanted and very often, they didn't want you in gyms anywhere at all if you were disabled, right? Firstly, there was no kit. The reason there was no kit, because no disabled people went there because there was no kit for them to use. So what's the point in putting kit in somewhere where we don't get any disabled, yeah? That was the old adage back then. So what I wanted was I thought I did my first marathon as well then. I did the Gloucester Marathon. It almost killed me, my fingers. Oh, and I had lumps and bumps everywhere. And at that time, my mate, Chris Allen, who to me was one of the greatest Paralympians that ever lived, he was in hospital. And so I thought, I'll go down and see him. And I tried to push my chair like this because I couldn't even hold onto the wheels. And we were in there, and him and I were chatting, and I said, Shades, we've had a cracking run, you and I said, how do you fancy pushing from John O'Groats to Land's End, and we'll try and raise as much money as we possibly can and build a clubhouse for the boys, you know, a new clubhouse. He said, that's all right. He said, who's going to give us money up in Scotland? Who's going to give us money down in Cornwall? Why don't we push around Wales? And I said, hey, that makes a bit more sense. He said, leave it with me. So he decided that what we were going to do, he figured it all out, and he decided that we were going to push 400 miles around Wales in 11 days, right? In 11 days to raise as much money as we possibly could. And I thought, 400 miles, 11 days. I've only just done this marathon, it killed me. 26 miles. So I thought, oh my God alive, 400 miles. All right. So I left it to him. And at that time, we met up with a guy called Howard Gadd. And to raise money, we used to shake buckets, you know, and he became like our fundraiser. And Howard organized this like push around Wales. And it took us a couple of years to get it organized, because it turned from building a clubhouse to building a leisure centre, or a centre for us, that would accommodate disabled people, that we had the key to the door. People couldn't say to us, oh, sorry, you can't come here today. I want everybody to use it. Able-bodied, non-disabled, whatever. Everybody use it. But you don't keep us out from it. It's ours. Yeah? We've got the key to the door. I threw a discus. I had to throw it in the school sports once. And I think I won that. I think I won it. But after that, it was, I only went to a secondary school and I was gone by the time I was 15. I went down to work in the pub, in the local steelworks after. So, no, it didn't do much for me. And it was just getting on with life as a boy and enjoying myself, getting out, you know, seeing the girls and going out for a drink with the boys. And by the time I got to 17, 18, then it was, you know, once I got to 18, I had that accident. Like, that was the one thing then that started motivating me. I had to do something. I needed people's respect. I think what I did have going for me, because of all the weights, I was strong. Yeah. I was strong. I'm not strong compared to some of the guys today, but I could still bench 140, 145k, and I was 11 stone. Oh, it comes right from down in your core, and you have to, when you bench a big one, you have to think, this is going to go, whoa, this is as light as a feather, this is going, and then you just dig in and that roar, that sends it up. But I think once if you start getting ahead of yourself, then you're nothing. Yeah. And once you're up the top, there's only one way. And then you've got to meet those people on the way down that you pissed off. And that was the last thing. No matter how many people stopped me, and Deb, my partner, she says to me, "Oh God, have we got to go to Cumbrae? Because who's going to, you know, they'll stop you straight away. Some will, oh Johnny, I said," and she'll walk off. She'll walk off because people still stop me, and I'm not going to not stop and talk to them. Always stop, because I owe it to them, because I wouldn't be where I was without people, like, you know, so I owe it to them to maybe stop and have a chat. It don't happen so much today now because of my age, like, you know, but it was still there, like. But going to the push around Wales, because it's quite interesting, in fact, that when we started the push around Wales, we started off up in Wrexham, newspapers, television, radio, they were all there. And they interviewed Chris Hallam, and they said, "What are you doing, Chris?" He said, "Well, we're pushing around Wales to raise money to build a sports centre for the disabled." So she said, "What sport are you doing?" He said, "Well, I'm winner of the London Marathon." He said, "I'm Olympic gold medalist in 50 metres, world breaststroke champion." And she said to me, "And what do you do, John?" I said, "Well, I'm Olympic gold medalist, world record holder." And I said, "I'm the world discus champion." So in the paper then, a couple of days later, whatever, this article came up. Chris Hallam, winner of the London Marathon, 50 metres world breaststroke champion, Olympic gold medalist, is undertaking a 400-mile push around Wales with his friend and compatriot John Harris, who's the world disco champion. So Chris pushed and I danced. You know, so it was awesome. But I think what that highlighted wasn't the fact that we pushed 400 miles. It was the fact that it showed what disabled people can do and not what they can't do, which was so important at that particular time. And it was highlighting disability in a way that had never been highlighted before. These guys pushing 400 miles, of course, it was on TV, it was on radio, it was in newspapers, and people were seeing us up and down roads all through Wales, like, you know. So no matter where you went then, after, for quite some time, people knew you, you know. And we raised £25,000. Yeah, totally different. Back then, people just used to stare constantly at you, you know. But going back to that push, you know, you're on this massive high, you're a Paralympian, everybody wants your autograph because you were blah, 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 blah. But you need to be humbled as well, yeah? You need to be humble. And if I tell you to keep this story in, because it's who I am. We wound up in a little school up in North Wales then, and all the kids were disabled. And all the kids were disabled, and we were given a talk and chatting to them. And there's John Harris, this Paralympic athlete, Chris Hallam. And in the corner of this room was a little boy about 7. And he was pencil thin, and he wore a skull cap and kept banging his head against the wall. He had a learning disability. And every time I looked at him, he looked away. And eventually I looked at him and I called him towards me. And he came up and he wouldn't make eye contact, but he stood in front of me like this. And I think, just being a dad, just being a human being, something was troubling this baby. And I didn't know what. And I just had this urge. I knew I needed to give him a crutch. So I picked him up and I sat him on my lap, and his teachers were like this looking up. So I sat him on my lap and I put my arms around him, but he was shaking like a leaf. And he put his arms around my neck, put his head on my shoulder, and he went to sleep. And he went to sleep. And one of our team come across, said, "Come on, John, you'll have to put the boy down now. We have to go meet the mayor," or blah, blah, blah. And I got balls to the mayor. I'm not pushing around Wales for the mayor. This is what I'm pushing around Wales for. To give babies like this a chance. give them a chance with a disability to be part of society, yeah? And all I wanted was the anonymity afforded an able-bodied person, yeah? To go into a leisure centre, train, and just train, and people accept me for who I am. This baby sat there, but eventually I have to peel his arms from me, and he runs back to his corner. One of the teachers came over and she said, "We've never seen that before. He doesn't respond or identify with anyone. Because all he's ever known is abuse, all his life. That's all he's known was abuse." But for a minute, he was with somebody that he knew wasn't going to hurt him. Whoa, you can be the best athlete in the world. Nothing more humbling than that. I wouldn't know him if he stood there, but a memory of that little boy will live with me till the day I die. And even now, if someone asks me to do something, if it's going to benefit someone with a disability, then I owe it them because of the life that I've had. I owe it them to maybe help a little bit, because that was, whoa, that was one of the most humbling things that ever happened to me, was our little boy. Knowing that he felt safe with me. That'll do me. I can live with that. That will do me. Yeah, Cardiff City Council gave me a plaque in the Millennium Walkway, which says, you know, disabled kids need heroes too. And my name under it, you know, John Harris. Tanny Gray said the quote first, like, you know, but that was the quote. I thought, well, yeah, that's nice, because disabled kids do need heroes too, whether it's someone that's only competed for Wales twice. But, you know, what they do need is, disabled kids need someone like me, that they can aspire to think and look at me and think, nothing special about him. If he can do it, I can do it. And that's what I want them to think as well, yeah? To think, if he can do it, I can do it. Yeah, well, the gym came about because we tried numerous places. We were even offered like some big tent, I don't know what you call it, to put up somewhere. Everybody thought it was a great idea. But when it actually came to signing papers, nobody wanted to know. And then we started having meetings down here at Ewick, and they didn't want a demountable. They wanted a proper gym built, yeah? And they became 100% behind it. Back in the day of David Cobner, Sean, and quite a few people then, and that's how the gym came about. But the ones that were instrumental in getting it built was people like Bob Humphries, Jeff Iverson, worked for the BBC. But one of the main instigators was a gentleman by the name of Ewart Parkinson. And Chris Allen and myself got on the first ever transatlantic flight direct from Cardiff Airport to New York on the premise that we were going out to look at wheelchair technology. But this was all businessmen going out there. And I met Ewart Parkinson in a big hotel in New York, and he had these twinkling eyes. And we started to talk, and he said, and he was a lovely, lovely man. He said, "What are you doing out here, John?" And I said, we're out to look at wheelchair technology. And he said, "What would you like to do in the future?" I told him about my sport, and I said, "I'd love to build a sports centre for the disabled." I said, "It's probably just a dream, though, Ewart." And he looked at me. And you know when someone looks at you, and it was a divining moment in my life, and he touched me on the shoulder. He said, "John, you dream your dreams." Yeah? And my son has that tattoo across his chest, "Dream your dreams." And he said, "Leave it with me." We got back about a fortnight later. He phoned me and said, "We're going to have a look at building this gym for you." And it was built here. And at that particular time, I was working for a company called Power Sport, and we had a range of equipment called Integrated. So the equipment would suit able-bodied and non-disabled people. So we all trained together in there, in that gym. But that gave us a lot of kudos and credibility because we were all together, yeah? And it was one of the first gyms ever that was totally integrated, because toilets, ramps, everything was thought of before we didn't. And one of the guys that came here to train, a lesion tetraplegic, and he could train on it, and I can't tell you the feeling that gave me, that I helped him to be able to train in our gym, because that was our gym, like, you know. And it was that's how it sounds simple, but it took a lot of years to get off the ground. It didn't just happen overnight. You know, it didn't happen overnight. We did that first push in 1987, but it was 1994 before we got that gym up and running, yeah? And then we did another push then in 1997, and we did 600 mile in 37 days. 37 days. It was a massive game changer, because we started bringing spinal cord injured people from Rookwood up here to train, because when I had my accident, they fixed my body, but they didn't fix my mind, so they just sent me out. So what was happening, physios were bringing people from Rookwood Hospital up here to train, so they were starting to integrate within society from the hospital, so they could go home, and if they did then want to go to a gym, they could come here, but also to try and fight to get some equipment at their own leisure centres, which a lot of them did, you know, and that made a massive difference. And the journey, and it started escalating, you know, to Disability Rights Commission and blah, 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 all those things, you know. And so it was absolutely amazing, and I just feel privileged to have been there at the beginning of that journey where people had more rights than they had back then. You know, there's still a long way to go, yeah? But we're getting there quietly, and a good friend of mine, Gareth Thomas, I'm going to have a bit of lunch with him now. He is absolutely phenomenal. And Gareth has had a couple of masters, and he's got a doctorate now, and he will make a difference. Definitely, 100%, he's going to go on to make a difference to people with disabilities, yeah? And that's important. You know, I'm, getting a bit long in the tooth now, but if I can help him, or I can help anyone, I'll be there. You know, and I was fortunate, I did 5 Paralympic Games, and I won Olympic gold, silver, bronze. I carried the Olympic torch. I climbed Kilimanjaro. I went up Kilimanjaro at 68 years of age. And I think I was the oldest wheelchair user ever get to the top of Gilman's Point, you know, up in Kilimanjaro. How cool is that? How lucky am I, you know, to be able to do that, you know? And when I look back on my life, so many people say to me, oh, when I retire, and I'm 15. It's 50 years down the line, mate. If you want to do something, do it now. Don't ever be afraid about not succeeding. The biggest failure is not having a go. So just do it. Just have a go. It's one life we have. And the most important thing is you cram as much as you can into that life and do whatever you can, because you don't get a second chance. You do not get a second chance. So just throw in it that Nike tick, just do it.